Okay, hello everyone, welcome. Today I want to introduce this paper. No MCMC for me, amortized sampling for fast and stable training of energy-based model. It's published in ICLR 2021. The authors are from University of Toronto and Google Research. And the first author is also the author of GEM. Your classifier is secretly an energy-based model and you should treat it as one. Okay. This link is the archive, and this link is to the open review, the ICLR 2021. But this paper is not easy, so I cannot say I'm completely understand. I can't say I completely understand this paper. Okay, let's talk a bit about the background. What is energy-based model? Energy-based model, they define the energy function. They define the density function in this way. The p theta of x, it's like the exponential of f theta x divided by the z theta, or it's right in another way. It's the negative energy of x. So here they define the energy, and they define here as the energy function. But someone writes it this way. Sometimes they write it in negative. It's fine. And the denominator is the integration of all the numerator, all the x. So we can see it's something similar to the softmax. And then given this definition, we want to learn it to learn the maximum likelihood. It will compute the gradient over the model's parameter theta. So we first take the logarithm and take the gradient, and we can easily derive this one because the numerator is simple and the denominator is just the integration of the distribution of p theta of x. It's the distribution of theta x. And we call it the x prime as the fake data, and here the x is the real data. Okay, the physical meaning of the energy function or the energy-based model is maybe it's about some prior knowledge. Here I won't talk too much about it. To optimize it, we know this is the real data from the data set, from the training data set, but where does the fake data come from? Usually, people will use MCMC Markov chain, Monte Carlo, or the SGLD to generating the x prime. The SGLD is in this way, define an x0 from some random noise. Then they update it with the gradient of the energy and plus some random noise every step to update the x step by step. So if we take a picture as an example, we can say it starts from some random noise x0 and we go several steps. For example, we update its key steps. Then we hope it to go to the low energy region, low energy area. But then we can see the k maybe is very large. Maybe it's very large, so it runs very slow. Then we update it with so many steps, it's very slow to train it. But if it's much less, the k is much smaller. Maybe for example, it can only go several steps here. Then it cannot generate a good fake data to estimate this gradient. These two terms and they use this one, so it's called contrastive divergence. So if we cannot generate the fake data well, generate fake x prime, it will become divergence. It will become divergent. So the training is very unstable for energy-based model. Another issue of the energy-based model is this one. Yeah. Sometimes, or we can see previous existing works have shown that it contains two types of the energy-based model training. One is non-convergent, one is convergent. For a non-convergent, maybe for example a PCD here, they can sample the good samples, like very similar to the ground truth. They can sample the good samples. They can generate good samples, but the estimate density, the p theta given x, is not good. It's not close. It's not close to the ground truth. Here we can see this part are totally wrong. So it's the potential issue of PCD. So the motivation is, we have talked about the motivation. There are several issues. One is the instability. Another one is the slow. Is the computation is the consuming time, and the third one is the density estimation is not exact. So they found existing work show that they can amortize away the MCMC sampling into a GAN-style generator. So they call their method the variational entropy regularized approximate maximum likelihood, which will add a generator, because previously they have the F theta x as the energy-based model. Now they add one more, G theta, or not theta, G phi, or they call it Q phi as the distribution, as a generator. So they have two models. Now for the use the Qx to substitute, replace the Px prime. So the first term is from real data, is still okay, and then the next term we need to find the final. We need to derive it and change it with the new distribution. So we start from, we don't use the gradient. We want to avoid the using of gradient sign. So we start from log z theta. So the definition log z theta is this one, the expectation of this one, and now we replace it with Q. So we have some starting point. The first one is that we want to find the best Q phi or Q phi theta, Q phi x, because it's still an optimization problem. We want to optimize the generator, so it's maximize it or minimize it. And the target is that we want to make this two distribution as closer as possible. The closer, the better. And of course, if the two distribution are identity, never mind. If they are the same, yeah, they can be zero. So to evaluate the distance between two distributions, we usually use the KL divergence. The definition is this one. They use KL of Q, the Q phi x, to estimate the P theta x. They don't use in the reverse way. And the reverse define a new problem. Okay, and they use this one. So the starting point is this one. We have the log z, and we want to find the best Q, and the best Q should have the same distribution. So the distance, the KL divergence equal to 0. So we directly get this one. Okay, then we can make the derivation. In the paper, they make a small change. They first change it to a max Q negative KL QP. I think this is not very important. Yeah, we can still. I think you can still use the main one to finish all the derivation. But let's follow the author's derivation. But you will see it's in a reverse way. We start from log z theta. Okay, we get this one and plus log z theta. And let me see. Oh, okay. So for this one, we use the definition of the chaos divergence and the definition of p theta x. So the definition we get max of q integration of x qx log. Let's see. Here it's previously it should qx divided by px of log, right? Oh, yeah. Here, this one. We should use the previous. It's qp. So it's this one. But now we have negative, right? So we move it into it to make it log p theta x q phi x again. Okay, so now it's q phi x, and then we expand the definition with the energy-based model with the energy function. So it's exponential of the fx divided by the z theta. Okay, I hope all is fine. And plus log z theta. So next, we want to move it out of the integration. Yeah, because the log derive log and divide, so it's subtract log z theta. And we can see we get the log z theta out from this log, and it's times the qx and the integration over the x. So we can see this one is a constant. The z theta is a constant with respect to x. So we can directly move it outside the integration, and then we found the integration of x over the qx because it is the probability density, probability distribution. So this one is equal to 1. So finally, we move the z theta outside the integration and get the negative log z, and then we canceled the log z, and finally we get q integration x qx log exponential fx and q phi x. Okay, so next it's very simple. We just make it to the subtraction because the log. So we almost there. Integration qx log exponential. It's cancelled x. Let me see. Maybe I forgot this dx. Subtract integration qx log q phi x. It's also q phi x dx. So we get it. Finally, we get it's the max of the expectation qx of the f theta x And this one is the entropy, HQ phi x. We got it. Yeah, I hope my writing is clear enough for you. And the appendix, we can see they write it in a reverse way, from the results to derive the starting point. Okay, and then we get the log this data new definition and we plug it into the objective function. Okay, and now we can add the new generator or a sampler. And we know basically in something like autoencoder or GAN, we generate the X from hidden variable Z with the generator. So in this paper, they define the distribution of the prior Z. Prior distribution QZ is the Gaussian distribution, and the distribution of Q phi X given Z is this one, which means first they have a Z sample from the random noise, and then they go to a generator. They get some X-like data, but it's still not final X, and they use it as the mu or the mean data and add the Gaussian noise with the sigma. So they define it as the distribution of Q phi X given Z. They sample the X, or they can write a function like this one. They generate data from the Z with the generator and add some noise. So the phi is the set of the parameter of this one, the generator's parameter and the sigma. Okay, so then based on this one, and the marginal distribution Q phi X is equal to the integration of Z of Q phi X Z dz. So this one equal to this one. So this is the marginal distribution. So we can see for the for this part, we can compute the first term easily because we just, after we get the sampled X, for every X or every batch of samples, we can directly update it. We can directly compute it. But the HQ is still hard to compute because it requires Z, it requires the integration over all the Z. So how to optimize with the entropy reg term? They need to optimize over the generator's parameter. So they write the definition, and because it's the reparameterized, right? We have the generators, we have the generated X and plus some noise. So it's the reparameterized. We can write it in this way. It contains the reparameterized distribution PZ and P epsilon. Then use the Leibniz integral rule to move the gradient into the expectation. This works because I forgot how to describe it. Okay, next, again, since this is a function, so when we do the gradient, when we compute the gradient, it's a function. So it's Q. It's like a FGX. It's a function of function. So we need to apply the chain rule to further extend it. So we can see after the chain rule, it's the gradient over the function times the gradient over the model's parameter. Okay, next step is I think the part I am not complete understand. I didn't totally understand. It's they said the score function, this part is hard to compute, but maybe they just use the prior knowledge. Yeah, they don't describe it in detail. I think because here the Q phi x is still an integration. Yeah, because it's still an integration. So which means previous steps they have several derivation steps, but it's still those steps didn't solve the integration problem. So next they need more derivation to convert or rewrite this one to support some approximation methods, or maybe maybe firstly to come up with the importance sampling. They firstly think, oh, okay, importance sampling is a good tools. Is a good tools to use. Then they, from the results, to find the whole path, to find how can we use this importance sampling, how we can come up with the derivation. But so maybe we have the target. We want to use the importance sampling, but now from this formula we cannot connect the entropy or connect the integration with the importance sampling method. So let's talk about the importance sampling. The importance sampling, we can see this figure. This figure is if we want to use MC, Monte Carlo simulation, Monte Carlo to approximate the integration. But if we use the Monte Carlo totally randomly, it may not have a very good result. It's not a close enough approximation. So they hope we can use the importance from the distribution, where we get another distribution, P or PPX, because this it's P or it's not P. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's the distribution of the importance. We can see the important part will have it's more dense, right? We sample more samples, and this is one. Then we rewrite it as another expectation over the importance distribution, and with this function. And finally, we use MC simulation with different with a different sampling to compute to approximate the original integration method problem. So this is the definition of the importance sampling. We want to rewrite the original integration with a new distribution. We hope the new distribution can learn or represent the distribution of the importance. So in previous problem, this integration, this is the integration problem. Now we have the final goal, the target. We want to use the importance sampling to approximate it. And of course, we need to use the hidden variable z. We use the importance from the z. And we also need because if we get a z, we need to generate the generate the x. So it's we also need the qx given z, the distribution, other than the xde function. So now we have the new target. We want to do the next. We want to do the next to move this to something q phi zx, because now it's q phi x, the given x, or qz. So from this one, from this definition, we have this formula. The gradient of log fx equal to the gradient of x divided by the fx, the first step. And the second step, we use the definition of the q phi x, integration z q phi x, the joint distribution of q of x and z, gradient integration of dz. This second step. Third step, we change the order, but I don't know the name of this method. Then we know the qx is a constant with respect to z. So we can directly move it into the integration. So after we move it into the integration, we can write it, because this one, we can write it as this one, by the conditional probability. And finally, because we want to because given z is not the target, we want we want to compute the gradient distribution of qz maybe given x. So we will need find. So from this, our target is to get the q phi x z without gradient, maybe some form here, and times the q phi x z distribution and divide by the q phi x. Then we can get the q phi z given x. And this one is this. So we need get the q phi x given z out from the gradient, out from the computing of the gradient. So we can use this one, because the gradient of fx equal to the log fx times fx gradient. Yeah. So we get, so from this one, we use it in another direction, and we get it. We get it. Then so this is q phi x z, and divide by this one, and it's finally we get q z given x. So finally we move it, convert it to this expectation. Now we get z. Okay, I hope this derivation is clear enough. Then the author that previous existing paper use HMC, Hamilton, Monte Carlo, so they go back to MC again. Let's ignore it. So here they can apply the they can apply the importance stamp, because this is the distribution. So, but for this one, if you know the in total they use the here we cannot we don't use the real data to learn the z, so we should move the x. We should remove the x, so they use another distribution. I think this one is at, never mind, at z given zero, z0 to approximate the q phi z given x. Now we remove the x with this new variational approximation. Specifically, the paper defines the z0 from the Gaussian noise, and z given z0 is another Gaussian noise with this one. It's also at noise. Okay, so minimize this pair. Apply the and they get this formula. I hope this should be something similar to VE. Yeah, you use this one to optimize the eta. It's a lower bound. It's use the z0 and x to optimize the eta. Okay, and so after the definition, after the optimization of the eta for the new distribution, new variational approximated distribution, we'll plug this into the previous formula. Yeah, we'll plug it into this one. Okay, yeah. Okay, so start from the definition. Then we can apply the steps, the process of the importance sampling. We have the ppx divided by ppx integration. This z0z divided by the thing with q phi z given x divided by this one. Okay, then this one we rewrite with the conditional distribution of the qzx of the x and the q phi x with it. Okay, so now we can see we can get the same, almost the same method. So this part is fx divided by the qx, divided by the px, and the w, the weight or the importance. And the q phi x is a summation, is the approximate of the qx with k samples. So this is the important sampling to approximate the previous one. So I hope it is clear enough. Yeah, maybe it's not very clear. I hope you can get the idea, because the importance sampling, we sample based on the importance. The idea, high level idea is not very complex, but the details, maybe, yeah, you should be careful. Okay, finally, the training code, pseudocode of the VERA. We have the energy-based model P theta. We have the generator Q phi. We have the posterior approximate posterior at Z0 and the entropy weight gradient penalty. So next, how to train it. First, sample a real data, a batch real data, generate a real, fake data, xg and x and 0, 0, z0 from the generator x and z. Z is z0 from qz. Then update the eta, update the elbow. Use the elbow to update the eta and compute the gradient. Update the energy-based model with the contrastive divergence. 2 terms: the real data, the fake generated data, and the gradient penalty to make it more stable. And then next is the important sampling. Sample several z from the z0 and estimate the score function of the z of the equation 8. And then compute this chain rule as transpose with and the gradient over the phi. Then update the phi with this one and this one. So it's the training code. I hope the code is not very complex. I mean the pseudocode. Yeah, the PyTorch code is, yeah, it contains a lot of code. It's complex. The experiments, they apply it on GEM, the joint energy-based model. It's train the classifier and the energy-based model together. But previously they train it in a single model. Now they have 2 models. One is for the classifier and also energy-based model. And they have a generator. It's also classifier. Okay, so previously they used MCMC to estimate this one. So now they use the VERA to estimate this one. And they show that their method is 2.8 times faster and never diverge, very stable. That's correct. But this one is a bit hard to estimate. I'm not sure. I run their code, but looks not. Yeah, how to say? Yeah, because I run the gen code, I get the speed for each. I get the time costing for each epoch, and I run their method. It's faster, but maybe it's not 2.8 times faster. So I'm not sure. It have a small problem. And they show that because they have different the coefficient alpha. They show that when the alpha is equal to 100, which means this one is much larger. So they need to set the alpha much larger to make the cross entropy. This is the cross entropy loss with the softmax to make it large enough to improve the accuracy. If the alpha is small, like 1, the accuracy is not as good as 100, but the image quality will be a bit better here. But a problem is that, yeah, for gen here, they integrate some noise, sigma with some random noise to the training data. So it's make the image quality worse. it have the negative effect on the classifier classification performance and also the generation performance. Now for the VERA, because the generator, they don't, it's much stable. For the generator, it's much stable. They don't need this one. So they improve the image quality. It's not, it's cracked. Okay. It's what we expected. But so which means for stabilize the energy-based model training with MCMC, we need to use the noise. So it's also another interesting problem, I think. Yeah, we just have some empirical result, but okay. Now the VERA, it's two model, and they have a classifier and a generator. And yeah, let's move on. And the tabular data, I'm not sure. Yeah. Summary, they show that their method, the advantage over other methods, like the score matching approach, have some drawbacks, but I'm not sure this one and this one. What does this mean? Their VERA, they need to use a generator, so it's their main problem. But they have these advantages. And compare with the MCMC, yeah, again the problem. Their VERA can approximate the density much better, much closer density to the ground truth, but it's also related to the entropy regularization. If the reg is very small, the generator can generate much better samples, but the density will become worse. If the entropy is too strong, the density will be better, but yeah, we can see this they generate some bad samples. Okay, summary. They also consider how to optimize the partition function for this term. And since SGLD is slow, maybe adding a generator with a variational distribution Q5X is better. Of course, it's better. So then they derive it and find they get an entropy reg term with the reparameterized Z and the epsilon. And after a complex derivation or transformation, they can use the important sampling of Z to approximate the integration of the Q5X to approximate the integration. Then they apply their method, the VERA, to GEM and stabilize the training, and also improves the speed up. They can also have a better result on the tabular data, and they also have some other experiments. Another experiment, but I'm not familiar with that definition. So okay. Yeah, I hope this paper I have a simple introduction. Yeah. Brief introduction about this paper. Yeah, not an easy paper. Yeah, difficult. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm not sure. Yeah, thank you.